February 7th, 2024, Business Retention Economic Development Standing Subcommittee meeting. We'll start with public comment, although for those of you who have not been, we have public comment throughout the event, throughout the conversation. But if anybody wanted to say something in public comment now would be the time. No public comment.
Just want to remind everybody that in order to speak, please turn on the microphone in front of you. There's a button.
Thank you.
And we're being recorded on YouTube for folks that want to see a record of the meeting. So please remember to push your button. It'll turn green at the base. Thanks.
Okay. Should we do introductions in the room? So, and then we'll end with Wayne at last, and then he can speak. So I am Jeffrey Bernstein, Mayor of Palm Springs.
Christy Holstage, Palm Springs City Council.
Dennis Costa, Boucher and PSR.
Dean Levine, Black Book, Evening Citizen in the Arenas District.
Laura James, CVEP.
Dave Powell, Desert Business, the LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce.
Joy Meredith, who am I? Crystal Fantasy and Main Street.
Bob Smiland, Desert Hand Car Wash, Palm Springs and Cathedral City, member of the Navigation Center Working Group.
Bill Sanderson, Tiny Bagels, and member of the Subcommittee and Sunny Dunes Business Group.
Paul Chapman, General Manager of Low Desert Modern Mexican Cuisine in the Smoke Tree Shopping Center.
Larry Klingerman, the IT Director for the City of Palm Springs.
Eric Graham, resident of Palm Springs and also a member of the Palm Springs Business District, I should probably get this right, Smoke Tree Business District.
David Feltman, hospitality industry, and recent co-founder of People for Palm Springs Parks.
Mercedes Nasser, Boucher and PSR Bar General Manager and Event Planner.
MJ Horn, Club 541, and member of Sunny Dunes Business District.
Well, it's like Phil Donahue.
Yeah.
Hi, Helen, owner of Peninsula Pastry, the French bakery, member of South Buchanan Drive and Sunny Dunes District. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Dean Grubel, Business District Administrator for the City of Palm Springs.
Flynn Fagg, City of Palm Springs. Rob Hampton, Convention Center.
Nona Watson, Palm Springs Chamber of Commerce.
Jasmine Waite, City of Palm Springs Office of Special Events.
Caller, are you there? Oh.
And
it's
now?
up to you. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Lauren Brueggemans, Director of Sustainability and Community Engagement at Visit Greater Palm Springs.
Great. And now we are very happy to introduce Wayne Olson, our Chief Economic Development Officer. And those of you who have met Dean Grubel before, Dean and Wayne are now at the Economic Development Department within the city that Councilmember Holstage and I have been advocating for. Just given previously we had housing and community development and business economic development were all under one group, and it was kind of, those are the two most important things in the city, or two of the most important things. So this way we can allow them more time on community housing issues, and we have more focus on economic development. So Wayne, why don't you give some background? And
Sure. I think I've met at least half of you, if not 75% of you already. Nice to see the new faces here, and nice to meet you. I hope to reach out to each and every one of you as I progress in the job. I started here January 2nd, so I'm getting out into the community and meeting as many people as I can. I won't go way back, but I started in real estate development back in the late 90s and have worked in and out of municipalities doing economic development in Minnesota, at Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then my husband and I moved out here in 2016, and I worked with the City of Palm Desert for 3 years, and took a couple years off and did some consulting in equity and debt markets, helped projects get off the ground, securing capital, and started this job on January 2nd. So I look forward to helping the community grow, strengthen our economic base, help the businesses that are already here. I think that's a really important message when we look at business retention, expansion, and recruitment, which are the fundamental role of economic development. But that business retention piece is really important. And Dean, that you've all probably met many times, if not, is really tremendous at this, and I appreciate Dean's work that he's doing out in the community as well. So with that, I'll leave it, and
We can,
If I can ask Dean too, do you want to say something? I know we introduced you at the last meeting and you were able to speak, but we have new people here. And by the way, it's so great to see you all. Thank you for being here. It's exciting for us to see the business districts grow and organize and have you all here today, and then also to see our department grow and have new leadership for economic development and business retention. So thank you, Dean.
Well, thank you. And it's good to see everyone here that I've asked to be here tonight. Some of you are still missing, but it's great meeting everyone, and I'm glad that the commercial districts are starting to form. And so far we have probably about 12 that are after today, this morning, I should say, that are starting to formulate and so forth. And some of you just get your signatures to me so I can get you recognized. I'm not going to look at Dean Levine for that, but thank you.
Thank you. Could you list the 12, not to put you on the spot? We were surprised by the number. So just a sense of what's forming, and so everyone knows what that looks
right
like.
now, the Arenas District, Smoke Tree, and the Commons area. I met with them yesterday. They're formalizing and getting everything ready to go. It's going to be quite a large area for that. There is the couple down on Main Street. There is the Uptown Arts District that they're looking at formulating. Today, it is the Design District, they want to call themselves. There's one out on Sunrise and Vistachino in the shopping area. Rimrock is another one. And I'm forgetting a couple of them right now, but yeah, they're starting to formalize.
you had one at Tockwitz. Did we cover that one?
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, so Tockwitz
Yeah.
neighborhood is
As well.
activating as well.
Oh, and see, thank you guys.
Sunny Dune.
South Palm Canyon and Sunny Dunes are really coming together, and they should be, hopefully with all the signatures, later this month put together. So, and they are here this evening.
Where is the Tockwitz one?
It's Sunrise and Tockwitz. We're Fitness Edge and right across from Rite
Gotcha.
Aid,
Okay.
that area.
So nobody down closer to the Main
No,
Street area?
not yet.
Okay.
I've been mainly focusing on the outskirts since there was Main Street. And then Main Street is starting to come in and starting to formalize and kind of breaking up.
Okay.
So,
I think they're thinking about going kind of around the bend on East Palm Canyon there and covering those, businesses, and then maybe going as far as Elmer's. But, they're sort of self-designing districts, so.
Yeah, no, asking because if you had like a Tockwitz, like where coffee and all that is, and Oscars, maybe that would expand into part of an Arenas district.
Yeah, I might ask, so I don't have to put Dean on the spot, because that was great. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you that or even make you speak at all. And then I ask you, please tell us all 12 right now. Perhaps at a next meeting, we can add to the agenda an update about the business district organizing, and then we can hear some feedback now if you want to do that. But we can also add that to an agenda and have a deeper discussion, because it's self-organized, but it also is going to take some leading, right? Because it's recruitment work that Dean is leading to. And so, yeah, look forward to, thank you for all your work. That's amazing. That's very good.
Can I just ask one question?
Sure, feel free to ask any questions of staff
okay.
now.
So I'm working right now on organizing from Andreas to Amato, and then I might possibly go further than that. I'm just trying to take one block at a time so that we could accomplish it. Is anybody working on organizing from Andreas to Tockwitz? Because I think that's one of the things is I don't really know what's already being worked on, and I don't want to offend anybody by stepping on any toes, because everybody knows I never want to step on toes.
In full disclosure, that's for my businesses, so
Yes.
I am not, and I have not heard that happening, so I'm probably not the
Okay.
person to organize it.
Well, I'd like to grow it further, but I didn't want to if somebody else is already working on that, so.
If you
Just
have an
putting
answer
that-
now, if not, what we can do is add it to the next agenda. We'll look at a map, we'll look at what those kind of proposed boundaries or, you know, approved boundaries look like, and then we can see which areas are missing and which might want to be incorporated or which might want to do their own thing.
But how would we know what to do now? That meeting's going to be in a month. Should I just stop trying to organize for a month?
Go ahead,
No, keep going, and I'll meet with you, just call me, and we'll get together, and I'll walk the streets with you. And do that.
We've already had 2 organizational meetings for the district that I told you about. Dean was not at those by our choice because we want to talk about something else first, but we'll have him at the next meeting.
I think, first of all, 12 is, I'm really like in shock right now because this was just an idea and I knew there was 2 coming and that was it. So, and this is really, I think, for expanding communication, for expanding efforts throughout the city. I think the idea that this was based upon was the 1PS model that, that's how Flynn came up with this. So I think what happens is as you look at, as it grows naturally, you may find either expanding into other areas or other areas decide they want to start their own. And then eventually you end up with a map of the city and see which business districts are not incorporated into anything and then more actively try and get them involved. But this is, I'm becoming shocked.
That is great, because I remember from discussions from not too many months ago that we were starting having 1 and 2. But is there going to be a plan, whomever, that kind of like 1PS, where it's not 2 or 3 blocks becomes a district, but it becomes a generalized area? Because all of a sudden, you have 85 business districts here that are tough for city to manage. So are you going to look at those, sketch out some things like 1PS does and say, okay, you 2, that's great, but why don't we put you into 1 district?
I would say part of it will depend on each business district. Some of them may have, Arenas has its own specific probably goals and objectives and probably doesn't want to expand too far into another district. Palm Canyon may be a different story. I would say the arts districts that is at Sunrise and Vista Chino is very different than the other businesses. So you may have 2 adjacent, but then I think what will happen is eventually we could have either in addition or to this, a 1PS, a 1 type meeting where you have the representatives from each of the 12 or come together and talk, which they can do at this meeting as well, but that could be more of an open discussion and they can set their own agendas.
Very exciting. Momentum is a good word in life, and you have that. 2 questions. The concepts of communication, business development, and, if you will, business retention, all are substantial. How big is the department? 1 question. And I just want to set expectations for all of us. And 2, I don't know a thing about the city's budgeting process, but how comfortable can we be that this department will be in the budget for quite some time?
On the last question, as long as I'm here, very comfortable, and Councilmember Holstridge, because we fought for this for a long time, and I think, and I shouldn't say, but I think our city manager firmly believes in the importance, and we have some major issues that are coming up in this city in terms of convention center expansion and a convention hotel and airport master plan, and all of which really requires us to have an economic development department. And on the housing front, we have even more going on with 3 affordable housings and a navigation center and tenant-based release. So their plate is getting full too. So I think in that one, it will keep going. And I think, in fact, we had talked about expansions because at the first meeting, we also talked about business improvement districts where you're actually paying, there's a fee on your business license or other type of fee that other cities do as well. And that actually becomes a more robust model that it will take staff time to help manage too when you start getting into dollars and cents.
Yeah, the city council has also approved a strategic plan or strategic goals and priorities, and so economic development is one commitment that the city council has chosen as one of our most important goals year over year. Flynn is here, who's an assistant city manager. He didn't say your title, but can explain more. But we have a 2-year budget cycle. But yeah, I'm sitting here you look at me, I'm very proud right now because this is years and years of work to build out an economic development department. I've been working on it for almost 6 years. And so now we have really great staff who can really implement and work with you, and you'll have more support at the city. Flynn. Did I say Glenn? Flynn.
Yeah. So, and I think what is going to happen if we go, I don't know if we'll have 85 business districts, but we could end up with a couple dozen, a few dozen, and that will take a lot more time and effort and stuff, but it'll benefit the city a lot too, and I think we have people here from Visit Palm Springs and Visit Greater Palm Springs, and for them to be able to reach out to, the design district, which is not a district which normally gets known as much, will be beneficial to them to be able to do it. They can support it, and the city can help. So yeah, I think this is really terrific. And this also, having Dean and Wayne here will also help shape future agendas for this group.
Just to kind of expand on what he was saying, and not just to manage expectations, but where this is going and how they are utilized. It seems like we've got Jasmine and Rob and Kimber back there and Nona, that once these districts get delineated, right, this could be an additive thing for marketing. And so I picture like a website that highlights the virtues of each district, and where they're at and what we have, so that there's kind of a cohesion to it. So it's not kind of disjointed and there's just one here and stuff like that. That at some point you guys budget something where you can give the convention folks and anybody else the ability to use that as a tool for marketing for the city.
Good point. I would also, just on this, before we move on, suggest that if you have ideas for a future agenda or topics, feel free to pass them on to Wayne or Dean, and we can add to it. There are some groups, I know we're going to talk about later on, the broadband update, which may splinter off into a separate discussion group as well. So not everything, if it doesn't involve everyone, would have to be involved. But we're going to move on to our events in Tour de Palm Springs. This came up last meeting in two different manners. One was just understanding how road closures and events affect all of our business districts, not just the area that it's in. And then also came up in terms of developing new events. We had the Palm Springs holidays over December, which was very successful. And so we're trying to, and I know Dean has talked about other arenas and Pride-related, LGBTQ-related events, so that's all sort of coming on board. But why don't we leave it to Jasmine Waits, and if you can just tell people who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jasmine Waits. I work with the Department of Parks and Recreation. I oversee the Office of Special Events. And by oversee, I mean I oversee myself, so it's just one person. And I'm sure you all are aware of the amount of special events and programs that happen in the city because they impact your businesses significantly. I have been with the city for 18 years. I started when I was 10. So I have seen the development of the city, and I'm very proud to be part of it. I'm very excited about this conversation. I have learned over the years that communication is key, and when it doesn't happen, it is loud and it is very difficult and challenging. So part of what I try and do is make sure that I'm communicating with everyone about programs and events that do impact businesses. It is extremely challenging, so the idea of districts really does excite me because it's easy to contact someone and say, hey, this is going to be happening and this is how it's going to impact you. Can you get me any feedback so we can make adjustments accordingly? It has been very helpful in neighborhoods, all the different neighborhoods. So when there's an impact to a neighborhood, we find the leader of that particular neighborhood. We get the information to them. We try and get it to them multiple times so that they know what's happening. And if you miss the first one, then ideally you'll catch the second or third one that goes out. So district notification for the work that I do feels huge. So I'm excited to hear how this particular project develops. I think the idea was to have, to kind of create a better communication plan through the Office of Special Events and how we can ensure you all are aware of things that are happening. I have worked with Joy for years because I started with the city overseeing just Village Fest. So the communication was pretty concentrated in the downtown quarter area. So what I still do is I give Joy notifications of anything that's going to impact the downtown area. But events in Palm Springs have grown significantly, not just in terms of new events, but the current events that we do have grown in numbers by leaps and bounds. So the impact grows further than just out of the downtown quarter for a lot of things. So I think I'm here just to have some conversation about better communication processes and also talk about some of the events that we do have coming up that do have some impact to businesses.
Yeah, I want to just fill you in on some discussions on the last meeting before you were here, so you know, and this is why this came up, was because we had members from the South Palm Canyon Sunny Dunes District talking about different events that go on, not in their area, but how it affects their area in terms of traffic and things. So we can talk about that. Before I go on, I want to make sure, is everybody getting Dean's newsletter? Okay, because that really should become, and I think the more regular it happens and the more current and first information, first time alerts that are there, like you said, the first time it's there, the more people will start to really go through it and look for it. Sometimes we get emails, we realize them, we'll look at them later on. If it comes from you, it should be something that the businesses want to read right away. And that's good communication addition to what you're doing.
Yes, so I do make sure Joy has information, and then I've been working with Dean to make sure that he has the information and the updated information. So a good instance is the event this weekend, Tour de Palm Springs, which has a significant impact to the city across the whole city. We do shut down downtown Palm Springs, but because riders are making their way throughout the entire city, it impacts businesses and residents throughout the whole valley, throughout the whole valley, but particularly the city. And we have had significant changes that have changed kind of day after day after day because of the weather. So we've had to make route changes and closure changes for the event that's coming up. And I've kept Dean in communication of all those changes that have come through. So the hope is that it does get disseminated out to the businesses, as well as Denise, who helps disseminate it out to the neighborhoods.
Can I make a suggestion on, I signed up for every city email list and everything, and I think one tool that you're missing that you're not using, I know the police can text people out today, road closures. We should expand that to just a few key like that. I see that faster than I ever see an email. I know if I got an event post going, hey, we're gonna be closing roads down, here's a link to the actual thing, it's going to ping my brain a lot faster than the 300 emails we're all going through every day to delete spam. I think we have the tools in place to better that. Make it very finite, but I would look at that definitely as a better tool, because that also goes to the public. Just not the businesses. Everybody who wants to sign up for that gets it.
So we do have that tool set up, say for Village Fest. We have all of our vendors who come through the Village Fest process. Once you're approved, you sign up for a text. And it's just a small group of the Village Fest vendors, and if there's any weather-related closures or anything of that nature, we can easily type that up and it sends and it goes directly to them. I believe we also created one for our swim center when we needed to provide swim center notifications of closure. So there is the possibility of creating notifications for special event closures or reminders and things of that nature.
I would say absolutely. We actually talked about this at our very first meeting, because we should be gathering all of this when people do their business license signups and renewals, in which case you can ask people right away, do you want to sign up for text notifications? And also make sure that it's the right people. Sometimes people sign up for a business license and they're not even located here, but their manager should be knowing about the road closures. And we've seen that. So Wayne said yes.
Yeah, well, our department will work with Jasmine on the technology side of that, and Larry, and we'll try and figure that out. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Real quick, might be something to think about in the future is to get some signage that has access to certain areas. There's a, you can reach the Arenas District, you can reach Sunny Dunes. It's still available if like certain roads are closed and stuff like that. For example, I know Sunny Dunes the last meeting was saying they had real issues with people being able to get to their businesses during Christmas parade.
All the parades.
But they're not in the parade, and this is really what one of the motivations for you to come, because we have a number of people here who are in South Palm Canyon, Sunny Dunes, and during these parades, and that didn't speak better. They could talk about traffic patterns and things that affected their businesses, but they weren't even really within the main notification area.
Right.
So,
It gets a little crazy because the way into the Sun Center, because our business is at the Sun Center, is either you go in at the light or Paracella, or you come in the other entrance. That's really the only two entrances unless you're coming in from Bellardo. And when you close the streets down, I have no business. Nobody can get in.
We work until noon, and after that one, we lost everything for many years.
Could you talk in the microphone so
That's
it'll be?
okay, I have a high voice, if you can, I
No,
can yell.
it's for the recording.
I'm French.
We're on TV
Okay,
and
for the
YouTube,
recording,
so it's for
No,
our audience.
Hello? Yeah. I said that at the first meeting, huh? Okay, it became a nightmare for us. Sunny Dunes, South Palm Canyon Drive, at noon, you close everything at noon, and our business are dead, totally dead. And we have call of customers to have to drive them because they don't know the city and everything, by Bellardo and everything, but it's just a nightmare, but a real nightmare. And after many years, 10 years for me, but more for you, it's not possible to continue like that. I'm so sorry. We work so hard.
What we might want to do now as part of the road closure notifications is also use communication to the public about how they get to other business districts in the city, because you can get to Sun Center from this, from if you go up Palm Canyon or other areas. It's just when people don't see their normal route open, they don't follow it. And so that's probably at least a first step, is letting people know how, not just how to avoid downtown or get around downtown, but how to get that other businesses are still open.
Right, and I think the creation of business districts will help us kind of concentrate in on the challenges that are faced for that particular district. So I completely understand the challenges of the South Palm Canyon, especially during closures. And unfortunately, our special events have grown significantly, and they've grown to a degree that is beneficial to the city throughout the state of California and a little bit further out. So it's not something that we want to discontinue, but from my perspective, I would like to find better ways of supporting the businesses that are impacted by those closures, or if there's certain ways, sometimes we can find ways of, changing the street closure a little bit so it does open something up. Sometimes we can't, but at least I'd like the opportunity to have that conversation and look at it with the team.
That's all we can ask.
Absolutely.
And potentially other signage too, because there's a lot of signage downtown about how to go to park or, the detour, but then once you're out of that area, it doesn't really help a lot of people. And so I know, Bill, you were saying at one of yours, they were getting all stuck at one corner. Were you saying that the last time?
It's the guy from here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was another one. They're saying that at their corner down by Sunny Dunes, there was a street that was getting all backed up for some reason.
And that communication helps. So if I can get feedback on, there's only so many staff members that are out at these events, and obviously safety is our first component that we look at. So sometimes we're with the large group of people on the street, not necessarily on all the outskirts where there are backups that are happening, but sometimes I'll get an email that says, hey, this happened near my business. Is there something that you can do to help prevent it in the future? And then I bring that up with the special events planning team, and we talk about better ways of working around the events as well. So communication in return is also significantly important to our planning process.
Behave.
I was being polite. I think one of the issues that we had at the last meeting, and I think someone brought up at the Main Street meeting, was talking about the length, the duration of closing, and I think it was on the holiday parade. I apologize if I can't remember for sure, but it was closed at noon, but really no activity happened until 4. And so I think that was part of the issue of saying their businesses were impacted. Is there a way that could be worked out for later on to making sure it's only closed when it really has to be closed, or 30 minutes before because you have to set up things? I know that was a big issue, and I was surprised because I thought some of these things were supposed to be brought back to staff between last meeting and this one, and it seems that Jasmine was throwing a little...
It's okay, it's okay.
I know, you're used to this,
love
but
it.
it just
I love
seems
it. It
like
keeps me on my
those could be
toes.
some of the things that I know that were brought up at one of the other meetings.
Well, I'm happy to have those conversations. There is always reason for closing the street. I hate closing the street. I hate when merchants yell at me. It is not my favorite thing. So I work really hard to not close anything that doesn't need to be closed. The reason that, well, just for instance, South Palm Canyon gets closed as our pre-stage area, which means we have all of the parade entries coming in. They have to line up, they have to finish decorating. So that closure is a long span of time and is largely impactful to those merchants. So I understand that. But that typically is the reasoning. If we want to get too far into details, it also has a lot to do with staffing. So, we only have one group of people who do the entire road closure. So we have to strategize how the street gets closed in a timely manner, where this group of people can also close the entire parade route and do all the advance warning signage that happens throughout the whole city, the detour signs. So it's a small group of people, our streets team, who come together to make that entire closure happen. And then they work really hard post-parade to get it open really quickly so that that doesn't impact the merchants negatively. So I promise there's always a reason. I'm not closing streets just for fun because I like to do it. But I'm happy as we approach a little closer to the event to talk a little bit about the timing with this group so that we can have a larger conversation if there's any adjustments that we can make on our end.
Thank you, and please don't yell at Jasmine. She does an amazing job. You see her working out there for every parade. She's worked long, long, long hours. So I know that does happen to you, and I'm sorry, because really it's the city council you should yell at, right? We set the policy. We're deciding to do these events. You can yell at us. We're elected. But could you just describe a little bit more, just so people understand, like the special event planning process, and then, the opportunity for folks to share public comment or give their input like
Absolutely.
that. And then, we wanted to hold this space in this meeting so we can do that together and say these are coming up. Practically, this is what's going to happen. Opportunity to discuss, because I do think some of these our parades are quite old. We've had them for 30 or 40 years in the city, and so I know staff is working on those every day, and you're doing a ton of work. But if there are those points where we can analyze, like, is this still the best staging area? Or, right, we don't often hear that as council members, and then we're talking to businesses and don't have those answers. So if you could just talk a little bit about the planning process, and then, opportunities for people to contact you and how to do that.
Of course. So I am lucky enough that I oversee a really amazing team called the Special Events Planning Team. And they come together every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and we review every special event that happens in the city. So we're a logistical team. So we do all of the timing of closures, how many barricades we need, how much staff we need, where the volunteers going to be located. We work on our team is the Palm Springs Police Department, and we talk about all of our safety protocols. Our fire marshal goes through his logistics, and that happens for every event that happens in the city of Palm Springs. that is always an opportunity. We always leave it up for the public to attend. If you wanted to come, if there was a certain item on the agenda that you wanted to hear more about. Dean attends those meetings, so he could easily identify what impact it's going to have and what district's going to be impacted, and we can have people who visit that. So you could actually hear the logistics of what happens, months out, days before, and the day of an event. If we want to kind of talk a little bit about how we can make sure you get that information to merchants who are going to be impacted by an event, so they can either attend the meeting or get minutes of the meeting afterwards. We love when people attend because it is a different perspective. We think police is thinking all about safety and fire's thinking all about safety, and my goal is trying to take everybody's goals and try and mesh them into something that works well for the city, but that's inclusive of our businesses. So your input is important to that decision-making at that team, with that team.
I'm sorry, but Jasmine, could you maybe explain to everybody what the other people around the table are? You have 15 people sitting around that table, and what departments they represent. I mean, I know I've even seen the Red Cross there before. So could you just explain to people not just logistics, but actually what goes into that? Because I don't think they see that full picture
Absolutely.
yet.
So we have someone from our Public Works Department, the Streets Department. We have someone from our Facilities Department, the Downtown Department. We have someone from Planning who attends, because there's a lot of cross that happens whenever there's a business that wants to take out a land use permit. Sometimes it crosses with our special events, especially during really large scale ones like Palm Springs Pride. So we want to make sure that we're understanding what land use permits have been given out and what that looks like, what their diagrams look like, so that we ensure that we have fire access combined with their special event permit. So we have someone from Planning. We have some outside agencies. Sunline Transit attends our meetings every week. We have someone from ABC and Riverside County Health who attend our meetings every week. So it is a real combined group of people who sit down and talk about their respective needs from their agencies or departments, and how we can create an event that works for everybody. Does that answer?
Thank you. So maybe now that we have more economic development staff, we can think about how to get some of that department's input into this process.
Absolutely.
That's the value of having staff and a team.
Absolutely.
Just real quick, not to toot your horn anymore, but no, the opposite. Jasmine specifically, the Department of Jasmine specifically has been incredibly helpful to us whenever there is an event that goes on. We've had events happen on our street that we were not aware of, that within a week's time, we were able to give her feedback that helped her manage the event for safety reasons, and also less impact on what would happen on our street. So they've been fabulous when it comes to interacting with them. The only thing that they need is to understand what's going on and feedback.
Just switch gears a little bit on the events topic, because in a more positive sense, we did, and we can follow up later, we did this year do our first Palm Springs holidays. And is Kimber still there? Can't see her. Oh, there she is. So, and that Kimber and Rob really put together, and this was actually a great event that went the whole really December and into January. That was not all about road closures. Right. And they're going to look at doing it again, but they're also looking at potentially, I know Joy's talked about other types of events that could happen, like during Coachella when our downtown businesses are suffering, or in the summer when we need more excitement going on. So, Kimber, I'm putting you on the spot. I don't know if you want to say anything about Palm Springs holidays and when we start planning 2024 and what other ones.
Just to reiterate what you, oh, sorry. Hold it the whole time. Okay, thank you. Just to reiterate what Mayor Bernstein said, it was a very, very successful campaign that we put together to market everything that all of you all do to make this community so great. So we aggregated everything all in one spot. We had record numbers to our website during the holidays, which was just phenomenal. We put together a very robust marketing campaign and program for it, and we are looking at doing something similar for the summer months as well as Coachella and Stagecoach weekends, just to make sure that the community is still very much reinvigorated. We all understand as residents it's a little bit slower in our city during that time, so we're really hoping to put together some really nice promotions that we can get locals to really get excited about coming out and supporting our businesses during that time. It's been really wonderful, and I look forward to creating more.
Well done.
Yeah, that was great. I think we should already start on the holidays. Just
Next,
saying.
we just need the skating rink and the snow, because Cathedral City had snow and we didn't. No, you did an amazing job, and I heard a lot of feedback that people liked the program, and congratulations to the mayor who really spearheaded that idea and made it happen.
Chicka City. Okay, are there any more questions or things you want to bring up more about future events, Jasmine?
I did bring the notice that went out to merchants, so I'm happy to leave it up front. So it does talk a lot about the downtown quarter. I did put the alternate route that is going to be implemented this weekend because it's going to impact merchants along Talkwitz a little differently than in the past. So just make sure that they're aware of that changes, but I will leave them here, so if anybody wants to grab one on their way out. But I'm, again, happy to be here. I'm excited about the creation of districts and the ability to communicate a little more effectively with them. And I'm always up for feedback and how we can do things better. So please feel free to reach out.
What's the best way for people to reach you? Should it be directed to you or to Dean, or what's the right
I think
place?
either. Dean has joined our special events planning team, so he sits in all the meetings. I do like things in writing so that I can review it with the team. We always meet the Tuesday after a special event, so we could talk about what went well, what went wrong, and what we can do better.
Great.
I would suggest Dean is probably a good place to start, because then he'll know the other businesses in that area, and then can also do probably a little bit more outreach and feedback before it comes to you to say, you know, this is affecting one business, or it's affecting 50 businesses or 10 businesses. He'll have a better sense of the scope of what's going on, I think. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jasmine. Just to bring everybody up to date, after this meeting, you're going to get an economic development alert. It's kind of a newsletter, but it has to do with the tour to Palm Springs with a new route. And thanks to Jasmine, I know for the last 3 weeks, we've been going over this during the meetings, and we finally got the route from Cody, the executive director of Tour de Palm Springs. You will see that on the alert that's going out later today on that. And also with the bus line, with the changes with the bus line as well. That's on the alert as well. And since everyone's here, I'm going to put Jasmine on the spot because later on this month, in February, we have the Black History Parade.
Correct.
So can you talk just briefly on that?
Absolutely, yeah. And that is also listed on this newsletter that went out from the Office of Special Events. But yes, the Black History Parade is scheduled for Saturday the 24th in downtown Palm Springs. This closure, the pre-stage area is from Ramon Road to Baristo Road, and we close that at 8 a.m. For load-in of all of the parade entries. The parade starts at Baristo Road and will run up northbound to Alejo Road and will end at Alejo and Palm Canyon Drive. And this parade is typically, we get the street reopened fairly quickly. So Palm Canyon, the parade starts at 11. The street is normally open by about 12:30. So it's a pretty quick parade. The streets department does a really effective job of following the end of the parade and getting the parade route opened very quickly. And then the town fair takes place in the downtown Palm Springs Park, and that runs from 12 until 6 p.m. It is a fantastic event. If you've never been, please do come out and enjoy it. And then I also just have a couple other events that do impact merchants. The art fair in Francis Stevens is going to return this year in March, and the Art Chalk Festival, which takes place downtown on the new streets, so Museum Way and Bellardo Road, Bellardo and Barista, I keep getting them mixed up. Bellardo Road, and in the downtown park, the Art Chalk Festival will take place as well. So that's all listed here with the closures and such, and then my contact information is also on there if there's any further questions.
Thank you so much. And to people who are impacted, we hear you, completely understand your concerns. My, just so you know, my grandparents had a retail shop in a downtown in a small town, and so I literally grew up having like Christmases and Thanksgivings being them complaining about street closures for their businesses by the city. So we hear you. You do have a really excellent city staff and team who do care and want to make this work for everyone. And so thank you for sharing your concerns with us. Thank you to Jasmine and the team for being here. Really appreciate your one-woman show and all the work that you do in your department. It's really amazing, and you do a very good job.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
this is really, yes, absolutely. This is really the purpose.
Now we give you applause. Just wait till next
Bill?
meeting. We're just better
Can I
anyone.
make one suggestion possibly, Jasmine? Could they alternate the road closures on some, every year, maybe figure out a different way so the business isn't impacted every year, or at least maybe an alternate closure? I'm just saying, look at the model, if there's a way to do that. So at least every year you're not closed at noon. You can share the wealth with other businesses that they're closed, but at least you're not affecting the same businesses every year.
There is the opportunity to change. I can tell you, Joy and we had the Tour de Palm Springs also has a vendor fair. And so they were setting up in front of, they ended up moving down south of Tockwitz by restaurants, which actually is better for the restaurants and better for the fair, as opposed to just being in front of retail. So there is a potential to change, but this is why we started this group. This is why we brought in Jasmine, why Dean and Wayne are here, so that we can't solve this right today or tomorrow or this month, but we now have a group that will work on it together. So, and some events are, like the holidays, are really good for the city. And I will tell you, at the end of February, we had the Black History Parade and Town Fair. It's kind of interesting because we also have Modernism Week and the International Bear Convergence going on. And this happened last year, and we had, what was the group? The Asia Pacific Economic Summit was in town for 3 weeks. But they thought our city was so amazing for having these 3 totally diverse events and celebrations going on while they were having a political economic summit. So it's kind of interesting how we're very different.
May I just say one other thing?
And then we have to move on, yes.
Yes. I just want to say, if you heard them reporting out that the Tour de Palm Springs route, that they've just got that finalized, it's only because of the bad weather. So they had to make some safety changes there. They don't wait till the last minute to get that information out, like 3 days before the event. And I just want to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you.
I am her fan club.
Yes.
I know.
We are all Jasmine fan club members. So, and once you get a chance to work with her, everyone will really see. We are going into another topic that came up in the beginning, our broadband update. And this is, it's actually a very important economic development for our city, because it really could be a very, we've had different talks about tech industries and other things and what to grow in our area that is also additive to our tourism industry. So with that, I guess it's Larry Klingman, and if you want to introduce yourself and what you do, and then go on.
Of course. Well, mine's not going to be as fun as hers, but I will be talking about fiber and business opportunities. My name is Larry Klingman. I'm the IT director here for the city, and I've been here for about 2 years. IT has a slightly larger team. We have 22 staff that take care of the PD, fire, general government, and the airport. But in addition to that, one of our initiatives is broadband and increasing fiber optic connectivity inside the city. So I remember my first council meeting here in April, talking to Councilmember Hulsage up on the dais. She asked some questions about fiber optics. And I told her how excited I was about fiber and cybersecurity. I think everybody looked at me pretty strange when I mentioned everything that I love. But I'm here today to talk about fiber optics and some steps that we've been taking to try and increase the connectivity. Now, one piece that I do want to show on fiber optics is we think of fiber optics as another utility, similar to water, similar to power, similar to telephone. It's almost a telephone of the 21st century. So we try and believe that it should be ubiquitous throughout the city, and that's where businesses and residents are going to move, is where there's good connectivity. So, but today I'm going to explain a little bit about what broadband is. I'm going to go into our broadband master planning efforts, explain some concepts about backbone, middle mile, last mile. Don't worry, I'll explain them all. Go in some estimates of middle mile costs so everybody gets an idea of the scale and what the costs associated with this, some of the installation methods and the technology, last mile options past that, and then kind of drive in through the city council and their business model selection of how they would like to, from a policy decision, approach fiber optics in the city, and then also touch on some funding opportunities. So the state and federal, I've identified about $11 billion plus in funding opportunities for the city in this. So even though the numbers are somewhat big, we can hopefully get some money for it. So let me dive into this. All right, this is the worst slide, I swear. So there's a definition for broadband, and it's been changing. And the key top that we're looking for is in the middle, the underserved broadband. So that means a connection that's less than 100 megabits per second download and less than 20 upload. You don't have to know what those are. An audio CD, the things that most of us probably put in and listen to music, is about 600 megabytes. To give you an idea, on a underserved connection, it's 45 seconds to download that CD. On a fiber optic connection, it's less than 5 seconds. So it's considerably faster, and that same fiber optic connectivity on that same wire can actually go from 1 gigabit currently up to 100 gigabits. So fiber is definitely the path that we want to head in the future. So to do that, we actually went through and started a broadband master plan. That's something that I asked for from council, and they said yes. And then we found out that there is something called a LATA grant, which is some of that federal money where we actually went and received a LATA grant, and we are using that to pay for our broadband master plan. So we went through, we applied for and we received a LATA grant. Then we did an RFP for a broadband consultant, and then we awarded that last year. We've been working with them. This is our tentative schedule on the right-hand side. And the key part that really might interest you all is we're getting to the fun part now. They've been doing a lot of research, looking at maps and doing what have you, but we're getting ready to start sending out surveys to the business and residential community. We're also going to be holding a considerable amount of stakeholder engagement groups where the consultant is going to try and bring in the carriers, the business community, other government municipal anchors, the tribes. We're trying to bring everybody together to gain input on how we should build this and where we should build this. So look for that information coming from Wayne. We'll also be having some visioning workshops with council for the consultant to be able to present all of this information once they gather it together and offer you some choices of where you think we might want to head. There's also some cost estimates that'll go in there, which I'm going to be showing near the end some not completely made up numbers, but they're estimates. They tie with recent budgetary quotes and recent bids that other cities have had, but they're not set in stone. And lastly, there's the council model selection, which I touched on first. We need to find out from council, there's a continuum of how they want to deploy broadband intercity. If you look at the attachment, we're currently in full private broadband mode. And the only reason that is because we haven't actually made a choice. We haven't investigated it. We haven't decided where the city wants to be. So by default, we're allowing the private sector to do everything as they see fit. Frontier and Spectrum and Zayo. I believe there's another wireless connectivity company out here.
And the resell network that's coming, that has it.
And all of the cell networks that are doing the same thing, that's correct. So there's a continuum of models. There's the full municipal broadband. Think like we have a full municipal police department. Everything's run here, there's employees, what have you. Chattanooga is one example. They run a full broadband model. Ontario runs very close to that. And then you go all the way down to currently where we're at, where we just let the private sector run. But once the council gets all the information back from the master plan, this is one of the key choices they need to make, is how do we want to approach this as a city? All right, middle mile versus last mile. I'll try and speed through this. Backbone is, think of connections between New York and Los Angeles and Sacramento. Those are the big connections. We're not really talking about that. We're really going to talk about middle mile and last mile. Middle mile is creating connectivity and rings. Think throughout the entire Coachella Valley, possibly running up the 10 freeway, back up down 111. Connectivities inside cities of connecting different arterial streets within our city. Last mile is from that end piece to the residences and the businesses, what have you. Everything we're doing will lead to a direction to make some choices on last mile, but we can't build the last mile until we have the middle mile in place.
Are you working with the other cities on the middle mile?
Yes, most definitely. We're already working with CVAG, and all of the IT directors for the Coachella Valley cities, we've started a broadband working group amongst each other to try and work collectively. We've included the county of Riverside, we're including the tribes, we're including CVAG, and we're trying to reach out to any other government agencies to make sure as we're building this out that at least our municipal needs are also concerned. So we're one of the other stakeholders in the entire process. The business community is one, the residents are another, but the municipal organizations were an additional stakeholder. Things like if I want to have a backup data center, why not have that in Indio, and they can have their backup data center here, and we have an agreement, and we have cost savings if we do different things like that. Also our 911 centers, why not connect them on our private fiber and not necessarily rely on Spectrum or Frontier who've shown they can have issues.
We know how that goes.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
So I
go
have a
ahead.
question too. Thank you so much for working on this. So exciting. Just for context for everyone here, I asked that this come forward because we had heard so many complaints from businesses about their access to the internet and how that impacts their businesses. I remember when I had a downtown office, I had significant issues with that, and so we hear that again and again. And so for the regional economic development, our city council has also identified expanding broadband for our community, just to support and retain our businesses, to get businesses of the future, to compete in California's economy and a global economy, and so we don't fall further behind in the technology gap from the rest of California too. Thank you.
Yeah, and that really ties in with the fact that internet connectivity truly is a utility. And like I said earlier, businesses and residents are going to come where that connectivity is. And if we don't have it, they're not going to come here. So what middle mile, there's a couple different ways to install it. You'll see that number at the top, $550,000 a mile. That is a very big number. That is not inexpensive. That is going, there's a couple ways, directional boring. I have no idea exactly how it works. In essence, they start a hole on one side and a conduit comes out at the other side. It's a lot more complicated than I understand, but it's a process to get something from point A to point B. The other option is trenching. Directional boring costs considerably less, so that's what all the pricing is based on. So think about $550,000 a mile, but that conduit isn't good for only 10 years per se. It's more than likely an 80-plus year installation. There's no water pressure. It doesn't wear out. There's no friction. Once we get it in the ground, it's in the ground basically permanently. And even once we put it in, it doesn't mean if we run something through it, we're filling it up and it's done. They have these concepts called interducts where you can take one tube and turn it into 2, 5, 10 tubes. So we run the one conduit, which is the lion's share or 90-some-odd% of the cost, and then we install these interducts to be able to use some of it now. The cost difference between running a 1-inch conduit to a 4-inch conduit, which would be like the size of this remote as opposed to the size of this, it's almost no different. All the cost is the labor and the getting it from point A to point B. So we want to run the right size. Now inside that conduit, we're going to put a fiber optic cable. And it's not going to be just a cable with 1 wire or 2 wires or a computer cable with 8 wires. The typical size that's handled now is a 288 strand fiber. To give you an idea, it's not a very big fiber. That cable with 288 strands is almost equivalent to the diameter of a dime. So I haven't seen change in a while, but dimes are not very big. So 288 strands, Those cost about $40,000 a mile to put that cable in. To give you an idea, at 100 gigabit is the current maximum typical speed that is run on each one of those fiber optic cables. You could put 1 gig direct connectivity to 28,000 places on that one cable. So it's, as far as future proofing, it's more than big enough for what we're gonna need going forward. I already kind of touched on this. The speed, the connectivity, the cable, physically, it's almost identical to the cable that was out in the 70s and 80s. The cable itself is not the limiting factor. It is the electronics that's coming out that's being put on each side of it. So even if we put it in now, 10 years from now, that top speed's not going to be 100. It's probably going to be 10,000. So this is a 30-year plus investment in this cable. It is going to be good indefinitely. The other thing this cable gives is distance. Fiber optic cable using current electronics, we could actually run a cable from here, Palm Springs Airport, to Ontario Airport, put standard electronics on each side of it, and we could have communication between those two places. To give you an idea of the difference, a regular network cable that you might use on your computer can go about a football field. So the cable is, this is why the cable is by and far the default standard for anything that is ran out for middle mile and for the long term. Here's the scary slide. I didn't have enough items to add at the top, but I added approximate, budgetary, and ballpark in front of costs because I will never own up to these costs. So middle mile, one option we could do, and the consultant will give us a lot of different options. I just plucked a couple out to be able to share ideas for costs. Connecting government buildings, we currently pay about $325,000 annually for our connectivity between all of our government buildings. That middle mile, if we were to build that full middle mile out, which would basically cover to most where we could do the last mile through a large part of the city, that cost based on that $590,000 per mile, it's 12 miles or it's just over $7 million. That's a lot of money, and you might be looking at it going, trying to do the math, that's a 21-year payback based on the savings, but you also have to keep in mind that we could potentially pull bonds or something else. That would all be council choices because this is a 30 to a 70-year lifespan for this equipment. So it makes sense to pull a longer term if that's a direction the council might want to head. If we scaled this back to our core city buildings, think ones with a lot of people, a lot of interactivity, the airport, the police department, our recreation facility, our library, it scales it back to about 5 miles, and then that goes down to about just under $3 million. So I wanted to give those numbers, not to say that's what we're planning on doing. We're gonna give council many options of what we could do. But I just wanted to give you an idea of the scale of what we're talking about for these. With the $325,000 annually that we spend, that would now go to zero, where we could reprogram that money to something else, including building out future fiber optics or other city programs. And our speeds wouldn't be consistent. We'd go from a speed of 500 to a speed of 25,000. That allows us to add cameras, Wi-Fi at public places. It increases connectivity, library patron terminals. There's many, many things we can do with this. But it also does that bridge to last mile.
And Larry, you mentioned, I think, while we were preparing for this, that 325 annually is actually the current service.
That is current service, and that means that they're not, we know they're going to increase the prices. So that's in today's dollars.
So that's what the city is paying a third-party company for internet service.
More than internet, we also connect our buildings. We have a private network between a lot of our sites, especially our PD, our fire stations for public safety aspects, direct connections back to us. But yeah, that is the sum of current connectivity of pretty much all of our buildings. Now, that doesn't include, like, say, some phone lines and some other pieces that this would not completely be replacing. I tried to make it as apples to apples as I could.
Thank you.
But even in this savings, which could be more, you're paying back the full build out in like 20 years.
That's correct.
these numbers aren't very scary for how much you are scared of them, considering how much it costs us to build parking or
I was not
a
going to compare this.
navigation center, theater.
I was not going to compare it to the cost of a bridge,
Or a
because I know
bridge.
it's nowhere close. But I mean, it is a real cost, and it is a direction the city has to feel it is the right place to invest in the future of the city. So I just share the information. And I have one more really important slide to go, and then we can toss into whatever questions people have. Even with the really big numbers and not concerned of the big numbers, there is some help along the way. I'll drop back to this last mile one to finish up. There's funding opportunities. I touched on this in the beginning. California SB 156 has $6 billion allocated towards build-out of fiber optic networks in city. BEAD funding, we were awarded almost $2 billion for the state of California. That's a big part of our plan. We're doing our broadband master plan to figure out how we want to build our network, where we want to build our network, how we're going to interface with other local cities, so we make sure we don't build down this street while Cathedral City's building down this street. We're trying to coordinate, and then our next step is going to be to apply for this funding. So even while the money is still a good investment and it's a good payback, we might be able to actually get a large part of this paid for with federal money. And another big thing that will help us is working with the tribe. They're very interested. They have multiple locations in the city that they want to build out their network to. All of that 11 billion plus that I'm talking about, there's another group of money almost that large dedicated just for tribes. So if we start getting their pools of money, our pools of money, anything the school district might have, College of the Desert for connecting their facilities, once we start adding these together, those big costs that don't scare you but are a number to me, could go to almost nothing.
Amazing, and I'm, well, I'll ask questions, but I'm just pulled up. We told this group we've hired towns and public affairs to track and apply for grant funding, and so they have a list here of, they've applied and secured broadband adoption funds for the library, that local agency technical assistance program from the CPUC, $230,000, and more. So really exciting to see us doing this work because it's absolutely necessary. This is really exciting. Happy to ask questions for the group.
Dave,
Mayor, or did you have more?
I think David had a question.
No,
Oh.
let's start with Bill.
No.
Not to rain on your parade, being a little more of a futurist, you were looking at LEO, low Earth orbit internet, as an overlay to this, because in 20 years, most of the internet's going to come from the sky.
There's
With Amazon and Starlink and, just if that's in the mix is all I'm asking.
Yeah, most definitely. That was a slide I slipped over and didn't get back to. When we talk about the last mile, there's multiple options. There's private cellular, private Wi-Fi, fiber optics. Lower satellites are also another potential option.
But could it be backup as well?
Yes, most definitely. The big difference.
I have 30 years of IT, that's why I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. The big piece with low Earth orbit, and it's a piece I didn't touch on, is what's something called latency. Latency is the time that I say hello, and the time it takes for the computer on the other side to receive that and send it back to me and me to receive that back. When you talk fiber optic cable, for me to have that cable from here to Ontario, it's less than 1 millisecond, whereas the low Earth orbit satellites are going to be over 10 to 20 milliseconds. So things like a phone call where your voice has to show up at a certain time still don't work very well. Those technologies will come, but it will be a while down the road.
I just want to say you might want to start with the funding part in the beginning next time, because I was, my heart was pounding, but then you got to that, and maybe that could be the first slide.
I wanted to end with the happy slide.
I thought it was good, but what would you say would be then, say, council, if all of the stars aligned what would you say would be a completion timeline? Would that be, because you can't do 12 miles or whatever in 1 year. You're talking a couple of years? I mean, maybe you can do it in a year. I worked for a utility where we had to work on undergrounding. So is that, are there any projections on that of a 1 or 2 or 3 year completion? Because then the money would be put over years.
Yeah, most definitely, and I can't give a date to that. I can tell you it's not going to be a month. and it would not be 5 years. There's a lot of other steps that go into there. We're gonna have to apply for the grant funding. Council's gonna have to give us direction. We're gonna have to come up with a plan.
No, I'm talking about for, like, is there any estimate of, like, once construction started? If everyone said yes and the money came into the checkbook, does that look like a 2-year or 3 years?
Oh, it's less than that.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, CVAG right now is building out their traffic signal synchronization, and they are actually almost done. They're on one of their final stretches for a lot of their conduit run, and they have run miles and miles of conduit throughout the valley.
And can this be at all co-partnered with any of that?
Yes, most definitely. We are partnering with CVAG, and that's why I said a lot of the numbers that I have, don't take them for anything. One of our goals right now is we're actually getting all of the layers or all of the pieces of information of existing conduit in the ground and what have you. So we have miles of conduit that we actually own that CVAG is using, that if they align with where we want to be, which they will, that cost goes from that 500 and whatever thousand a mile down to 40,000 a mile.
I think we charge them $1 billion for that little.
I think that's a policy decision.
I'll work on that now.
David?
Yeah, I'd like to raise something. First of all, this is amazing for the future and critical. And I know Councilmember Holsted has been on this and the mayor for a long time. I'm going to burst the bubble. In the here and now, we have, and this is, I know this is in the private sector, but we're trying to solve problems for the city as a whole. We have dead spots in the city that are, shocking. The shopping center around Walgreens and Jensen's, you can't do anything in the internet and in that whole zone. And I'm sorry about my lapsed memory, I'm getting old. I was somewhere else recently in a commercial zone and there was no wireless access. This is terrible for our citizens, but also our visitor experience. Is there anything we can do to work with our private providers to solve these dead spots now? And do we know even where they are?
So for Wi-Fi, or you mean for cell coverage?
For cell.
So this, and I'll have the expert answer too, but this committee for years has been working on cell coverage. The city council has worked with some of the providers to extend that and improve that through cell towers. I have an agenda item for the next one. I spoke to AT&T, who wants to come and bring all the providers here and share their coverage maps with us. This board, this subcommittee has talked about working with the providers to provide city land, approve whatever we need to do to incentivize cell coverage. I totally agree with you. I had my siblings who are younger than me come and say, we would never live here, there's no cell coverage. It's a significant issue for those of us also who work at home. And so, yes, we are gonna work on it and talk about it, I hope at the next meeting. But if you have an answer, you can answer as well.
Yeah, most definitely. Most of the carriers look for a payback. So they're looking for, say, a 7-year payback of their investment where they know they're going to get it back. And if they don't get it back, they look elsewhere. So if it's an area that's, and this is a general speak, I can't speak for AT&T directly, of course. But if it's going to cost them $2 million to build out that tower and they forecast that they're going to get $200,000 over 5 years in additional revenue, they're never going to make that business decision. But to get that change to happen, to maybe get us to help build a small cell site or something else, I would say become a stakeholder in this process through the committee or however we're going to end up doing this. And we are also inviting the carriers. So the more they hear it from the more angles, hopefully they will do more about it. I mean, unfortunately, I can't.
Just so you know, I've had meetings with high-level AT&T folks and told them that I have 0 bars at my home as the mayor of Palm Springs. And I've said a bad word on live TV because my cell service went out as I was doing a live interview. And I had to guess what the questions they were because I couldn't hear. And it's a life safety issue because I've also had times where, if the power goes out and my home phone's out or the landline is out and you have no cell service and you literally, you only have... You can use the emergency feature, but you might not be able to call 911. It's a life safety issue for our residents too, as well as an economic one.
I think it'd be good when you get them here is to have a map on the city website that every cell tower and the carrier that's on that tower is overlaid on the city map, so anybody can go see where they're living, what's the closest cell tower to their house. Maybe they want to switch services. You know, that would be a great help. I did that when I was trying to, 3 years ago, I had the app on my phone, I had all the carriers on my phone, and I went around the city to find out which one was the strongest for the places I went. T-Mobile, luckily in the back of my store is a T-Mobile tower, so that's why I went with them, but that's a good thing to do.
I was living in an area that had I have AT&T, and was living in an area that didn't have great service. So went to AT&T, and they do have boosters that they're available for people that don't have good service. So those things are available, but you just have to be aware of that. Most people don't even know that you can get a booster for your cell phone service in your home.
But I think the booster, I have a booster, doesn't work, so it relies on the underlying service. So I'm still learning all the technology, but we'll invite them if we can add it to the next agenda item, and we'll invite the carriers, and they can present their coverage maps. I live in a gap area for AT&T, for example, and they have different ones, and we can talk about the locations of the cell towers. We still also get angry emails about the cell towers that we've installed. We did one behind Rimrock. People were upset about that, so it's a balance. Dean?
Sorry, guys. There's a few questions I had, but I'm going to try and make this quick because I know the meeting's running a little long. One, just so I understand, the last mile, that would have so that could affect all of us as business owners and citizens and stuff like that. So that would be an outsourced thing to a private company to manage?
So once again, that goes back to the policy decision of council of what model they want to take and what approach. That last mile could be completely city. They could decide to spin up a broadband department, hire city staff, run that. There's a couple cities, Chattanooga does that, Ontario is very close to it. Or they could decide, we're going to build this conduit and we're going to make this fiber available or pathways available and have carriers come compete to start providing that last mile service to you.
Okay,
There's plenty of options.
I know the city also has contracts or something like that with cable companies like Spectrum or Frontier. So that's also kind of a negotiated thing, and there's a negotiated thing for them, and so there's a lot of layers to all this. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that.
Yes.
On that telecom thing as well, there's two thoughts. One is with regards to cell towers, and like you were saying, a lot of it has to do with basically on their revenue generation. One of the challenges the city has is convincing the rest of the world that we deserve more money than we get based on our population, right? Because we're at, what, 47,000 or something like that, 45,000? What is it?
I think it's 43.
43,000. Okay, for permanent residents, but we get up to about 100,000 in season. There's got to be some sort of compelling argument to a cell phone company, and also large-scale events with the hotels and Coachella. So I would, if there's some way of making a compelling argument to telecom companies that there's more to this in this specific area than everyone else who wants to make the complaint that we need just for our residents. And lastly, and I don't know if anything's changed in the last 2 years, but one of the bigger problems is we have an airport right behind us.
Mhm.
And when we went to 5G, we can't go anywhere near that during the airport. They shut it all down because it affects all the planes. I don't know if any of that's changed, but that seems like that would have a large effect to a large part of people around the city. Is there news on the telecom front with airports and new cell service?
So I don't know the answer to that, but I can get the information back to either to come back and share or to have Wayne share. I know there's connectivity issues in the airport. We've looked at distributed antenna systems, and we're actually in the process of improving the Wi-Fi at the airport, and we're getting ready to get live on that pretty soon. It's a very large facility that currently has 13 access points, which I think I have 6 access points at my house, and it's a much smaller facility. We're looking at deploying about 120 to 180 there, so that will help with that connectivity, but I don't know the answer to the cell.
We can ask the companies when they come next time, because I've had this conversation with them, like they're rolling out whatever the next 5G is all for years now in other places, and then, you know, we're getting so far behind. And that's, my understanding is they're having those conversations with CVAG as well, because they're installing that as they go. So let's ask them next time. That would be great.
Yeah, and one other thing to touch on your point as far as the cost and what we can do, a big part of their cost of building out newer towers is that fiber optic connectivity. So if they don't have, if they can leverage a pre-existing pathway that could be shared amongst carriers, that would defer potentially 80 to 90% of their cost. And the big monolithic cell towers that you see now are pretty much going away. As the evolution keeps going through 3G, 4G, 5G, what happens is the distance that it travels becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. So one of the things we're doing in the broadband master plan is looking into what city policies we have to try and get a handle on small cell sites and what have you, so people don't start hanging big ugly things off of your telephone poles in front of your businesses. But as they start building that out, that should help. And I know I didn't really answer your question.
No, but yeah, I was just trying to put some of that out there. It's like, it's all connected, and there might be some things that can help.
It's also a state issue and a regional issue of where the, you know, CPUC and where I met with the Broadband Coalition and my other job, where they're planning on investing in political investments and strategic investments for California too.
So Larry, thank you. I mean, this was great, and it seems, I mean, it's very exciting to see and what could happen. And I think,
Sorry, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak on this too. Sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to interrupt before we close, because I know you've been doing a lot of work on this as well.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity just to chime in. And I don't have anything terribly substantial to add, except for the obvious, that as we embark on, you know, the businesses of the future, right? This is so necessary, and the farther behind we get, the harder it is to catch up. So I love seeing this kind of proactivity from the city of Palm Springs and the rest of the valley on this issue.
all right.
And before you add your closing statements, the biggest thing that I have is get involved. Go to the stakeholder meetings, have your opinion shared as far as what's going to help you, because this is our opportunity to gain our input into this process. I don't want to say speak now or forever hold your peace, but this is where we're gathering the information for council to make the decisions on. So the more input, the better.
And this is what's great about having Dean and Wayne, is we get more of the business community. And there's a lot of members of our business community who are not necessarily brick and mortar businesses who are actively involved in this and have a lot to contribute. Speaking just as a bit of an aside, so people know, because Nona had to leave, the chamber is actually, this is a little bit separate but related, is having an AI seminar for businesses on March 13th, if anyone's interested. And Mark Talkington and Peter Lafort, who are both very senior Microsoft people who know a lot about it. When you talk about businesses of the future, AI is going to be defining a lot of the businesses of the future. So I appreciate this, and I look forward to coming back to council.
I just want to make one point. So I didn't mention that I'm a member of the Airport Commission, and since you're talking about stakeholders and all of that speaking up, I will say we very much appreciate the work that's being done. We want to see it done very quickly. And I will say for the record that I've been probably the loudest voice on the Airport Commission, but not the only voice on getting the Wi-Fi capability to a just baseline level. And quite honestly, we've gotten a lot of resistance, and it's taken a huge amount of effort. And when we hear now the assessment that we have, or the data that we have 13 access points in the entire airport, it kind of makes me exasperated that, you know, I could just tell you based on the texts I get from people, because they know I'm on the Airport Commission, you know, what's going on with the Wi-Fi here, and that honestly we've waited years to get this to a certain point, and I know now we're just approaching implementation because we were briefed on that yesterday. So I would encourage that implementation to go as rapidly as you possibly can, given all your other challenges. Thank you.
You're welcome. We are definitely moving as fast as we can on it.
Thank you.
Okay, since we only have a few minutes left, this was great. Oh, yep, Helene?
Yes, just a question, not for this subject, something else, but maybe it will be a subject for another meeting, but it's very important. Could you talk about this future roundabout construction, please?
The Rotary.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
American, everything, because we are really concerned.
So this is the roundabout that's, I think this is a good future agenda item, and this is the point we're at now, because we often have dealt with this from a traffic point of view, from a engineering point of view, but not necessarily from a business point of view. And so I think that is something to add on to the next to it.
Because this project has been validated in 2017, if I understood everything, when we decided to change the same thing, Indian Canyon in the double direction and everything. But it will be great,
Yes.
to know when this project will start, to talk about that with all the services, because we cannot, when I read your email last night, to ask, oh, no response, you have to take, you have to ask to the engineering service and everything. We need to have concrete information.
Yeah. Okay, so that'll be on. Are there any other topics? Yeah.
I want to, the next meeting, I want to know what they're doing about when they're taking parking spaces away from businesses there. What is the city going to do to augment those businesses for that Rotary?
I took a look at that. Thank you, Dean, because he sent the proposal to us, and I took a look at that this morning. And from what I can tell, there is no intent on taking parking spaces from Sun Center, but I'm not quite sure. That's what brought me to bring this meeting.
Can I suggest that you've given all your comments to Dean already, and maybe there's another follow-up so that when we come back, because I know you have a certain number of people who are in your meeting, but this way we can share it with the whole city and make sure the staff is up to speed. But
Mayor, this is still 6 months or more away.
it is, but it is moving forward.
I just want to make sure
you know,
it's
we're-
not like before the next meeting.
No, they have to actually acquire some land and other things, so.
Well, it seems to me that there's money on the table. I mean, you're talking about raising funds for something that is really going to be instrumental for communication to the city, but you've got plans to do this roundabout that really doesn't make any sense. I mean, you've got, from what I looked at, it's like, I'm looking at it, it's probably going to be an $8 million project by the time you get it done. Because there's no way that they're going to stick to the projections that were from 2017 and 2021. So you've got a huge, larger budget than what they've allowed for, and you've got something that can be highly instrumental for the city, not doing a roundabout that really isn't going to solve any issues with traffic.
Well, I think this is probably also the reason we'll have Joel or someone from engineering explain and go through this and hear it. So, but it's not going to happen before next month.
I'm sorry, I know we have to treat a lot of subjects, okay, but 1.5 hours every, it's not enough, no? Okay, it's a little bit frustrating.
That is another question, whether we want to have more frequent.
But, okay, it would be great sometimes to spend a little bit more time to talk a little bit longer with you.
We actually don't have a time limit on these meetings, so sometimes they go longer.
But it was 5 last time too, and always when we close the city hall.
City
No,
Hall is
she-
open till 7. I personally have to leave at 5 to pick up my kid from childcare. But we don't have a time limit. We are absolutely open to creating this to be a useful space for you all. That's why we have it very informal. That's why we ask you what items you want. So please tell us, and we will design an agenda for how long you'd like to speak about
Yeah.
something. Oh yeah, I'm just saying.
Well,
we're
we can
here
also
to
think
serve you.
about potentially scheduling it, making sure people know it can go longer. But for something like the roundabout, we need other people at this table who have more information than we do, I think. So in terms of timing and cost.
But the other thing too is city staff, council members, et cetera, are available other than every other month. And so, and Dean, so obviously if it doesn't affect that, they could ask the questions, get some answers first, and then come back to the next.
And I want to really stress, this is why we started the commercial districts, so that you have, it's not like this is being discussed every 2 months, that you have Dean, and Dean has contact with Wayne, and Wayne has contact with council and city manager. So this is not something that should wait, and it should come to the point where we have this meeting that is actually discussing the end of it.
Can I make a
Yeah.
suggestion? I hear a lot of things, and I'm thinking what it would be like to be Dean or Wayne or Flynn or anybody else right now, and there's a lot of action items that need to happen. And now that we got different groups, why don't we have Wayne and Dean drive the agenda where they can actually put something together and call a meeting that might have to be in a month versus 2 months? And this way, one, workload gets managed, and two, there's priority on what agenda items, and so people can come prepared for meetings and stuff like that. And then if something urgent comes up, we can always add it to an agenda at the end of the meeting, like today.
Sounds good? Yeah. That sounds good.
I second that.
Yeah, I was just trying to say, I wasn't trying to argue, I was just trying to say, we are in charge of this meeting as a group, so we can call it how often we'd like. We can have it be as long as we'd like. We can have the agendas be along with staff capacity. So we are here to make that happen.
And you can give feedback to, again, if we think this should be monthly, if we think it should be a 2-hour meeting, if we think we should have breakout discussion topics, because we are trying to cover everything in one meeting, and maybe there is one that is, about events and current business one, there's long-term one, and then there's one that are infrastructure things that affects businesses. We could do it that way as well.
We could have
Yeah.
working groups or subcommittees on certain issues. We can do what we'd like here. Did you have something?
I do.
You do.
My suggestion is yeah, have a continue with the 3-month where we're at, but I think that with Wayne and Dean, that we as core people, like in time, chair people of our districts, are able to go into that meeting to be able to break down those people that we're overlapping. Where are we over? Why are we continuing to overlap? We've actually talked with Dean about, we're not going to cut ourselves off to these people on this side of the street just because they're over on that side of the street, they might be in that district. We still want to be able to communicate with them. Let them make that decision where they're going to be. But I think the communication with us and getting together more often than just 3 months would be pertinent.
And we could also do something, just so you know, if the roundabout is specific to a certain area, we could have a separate meeting that we have engineering, and I could go to, Councilmember Holstage, or both of us, and Wayne, and do it so that for some people, not everybody would be affected by this. And so we can do additional ones instead. We may want to say, if Kimber wants to talk about special event plannings, that may be a separate group that does it, that doesn't not of interest to everyone. Yes,
Just briefly, if anybody else has passion for flags, which I do, sitting with our new Palm Springs flag, I have a very creative idea to raise lots of money for the nonprofits in town. If anybody would like to learn about that or talk to me about it, I'm happy to share some creative thinking.
Great, thank you.
And Mayor, this is also one of the things Dean, I think, mentioned earlier on, as these districts are being developed. That's where it starts emulating a little bit more the 1PS. And then it goes on to a regular thing. So it may not be there, and that might be the evolution from this subcommittee into the I don't want to say BPS, but whatever the hell it is. It could evolve into that. We've been talking about that as long as we've been at this table for years.
Yeah, and 1PS means monthly.
Sorry, but between now and the next meeting, though, why won't, it would be a good idea, in my opinion, that Dean and the merchants in the Sunny Dunes area, and invite Joelle to that meeting and let them ask well before our next meeting. They don't have to wait for it, just organize such a meeting, let them ask all their questions and get that answered. It's really kind of easy to
Yeah, Dean and I have
do
actually
that.
been already doing research on the roundabout and helping to gather information, and we would be prepared to do that as Joel's schedule works with that, so happy to do that at any time.
Are there any other agenda item requests for the next meeting?
Nope, but if you have something that comes up, you can always mention to Dean, but again, we can have other separate meetings as well, and if you want to do the roundabout and have other people there, we can do that as well. Okay. We are going to adjourn. Thank you.